and one of our clients, Degreed, and they're going to be doing a talk on the building of communities. Thank you very much. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for being here today, and Deeps, thanks so much for coming in. We're very excited to have you up on stage. The world of marketing over the course of, well, forever probably, but certainly in the last 10 and 15 years has gone through such incredible transformational change due to the technologies of how we engage with each other, whether that be social media, how TV has moved on, how traditional advertising has developed. It's creating an atmosphere whereby technology is in many ways bringing us closer together, but so easily brings us further apart on an ongoing basis. So when thinking about brand engagement and how to bring audiences together, it's so easy to be sat in places of siloed strategy, and bringing that all together under one place is how we need to work together to shape the future. Community feels like the center piece for that for us. And what I'd really like to do is very excited to have Deeps, the global CMO of Degreed, learning and development company that's mission in life is to jailbreak the degree and put skills at the center of that story of lifelong learning. So Deeps, thanks for joining me. I'd love to hear how, obviously you've had a really interesting career from Google to Twitter and all sorts of other places along the way. How has technology changed your strategies and outlook on engaging with brand audiences?
Well, actually, before I answer the question, I want to give it up for Grit Daily and Lively. This house, this space, the vibe, the Sunday brunch, all of that, I love it. And we'll get to the Bloody Marys very soon, depending on how this conversation goes, I'm guessing. So, I think what's interesting is if you look at the immersion of technology across all of our lives, right? Every single conversation we have is rooted in technology today. Like it is, regardless of industry, regardless of sphere. There are not many places on the planet that hasn't had some influence against technology. This topic and this theme in particular is super interesting to me because the way I approach the fundamentals of marketing and our team and the creative work all goes back to the human experience, right? Ultimately, the human experience, if you think about why this is such a great space and the environment you've created here, we were chatting earlier, you could easily do this on Vision Pro potentially, but you wouldn't have the same impact of being live in front of an audience and on camera here, having this sort of rich conversation. And it all comes back down to connection. And connection can be sort of thought of in three different ways, right? Can we create meaningful connections? Can we create relatable connections? And can we create this idea of authentic connections? And all of those three pillars should be designed in the use of deploying technology. So we should be thinking about technology against those three. I'd say, probably the best word to use there is variables, right? You've got those three variables, and depending on your audience, your business objectives, all of those things, you can start to look at those three and say, how can we deploy technology to be more meaningful, authentic, and relatable to our audiences? And that's where, a lot of our conversations, I think, have gone into, can we create unique experiences to be able to enhance each of those three areas?
That's exactly it. And we certainly on the business to business side as well, bringing in sporadic groups that actually need to come together and be able to have an environment whereby, yes, ultimately there is a track of sales, a track of conversion that needs to be reached at some point in time. But getting there and creating an authentic experience for that group all at the same time has to be built in an environment of authenticity. And so creating trust, a genuine space, let's call it, for people to be able to express to be able to connect with each other, share ideas, ask the stupid question, which is never a stupid question, and really get into the experiences that others within that group are having, is phenomenal. And technology, like, we can't meet all the time. It's hard for people to get together. It's people's schedules, among everything else, the busyness, the craziness of the day. I think in the last talk we heard that there was 5,000 marketing messages a day that people are receiving, and the chances of anyone remembering even one of them would be unbelievable. Mm-hmm. And so with all of that noise, with all of that the need for cut through in a place where it's so difficult to do that, what sort of strategies have you explored or seen change over the years, like coming from the Google days versus today, where we're living in a world fueled with AI and like a proliferation of content?
Yeah, it's a one word that Mark, you just used there was the word trust, right? And I'd say that all of us are seeking more trusting environments and relationships than we ever have before. Like, if you look back at the last 15 years, the biggest transformation, I think the trust-seeking behavior of humans has, and I emphasize the word seeking, because that's what people are looking for. Mm. So then, you put it in context of the macro environment, especially in an election year in the US, and, the trust in government is at the all-time low. I'd say the trust in brands is shaky at best, waning, but desperate. Like, people are desperately looking to identify with brands and ideologies around brands, particularly. And then third is trusting human connections. Like, if we think about even the relationships that we're trying to form, the challenge there is, how can we overcome the influence of things like Gen AI and other technologies in order to create those authentic experiences and spaces? So I'll get to your question based on that. To me, at Google, the time I spent there, and at Twitter, as a marketing and creative leader, you've got to be very centered around your principles in how you bring marketing experiences, brand engagement to life. And so, one example that I can tell you a story about is at Google, we did a campaign where this is a B2B campaign, where we basically recreated the most iconic commercials from the 60s and 70s and brought that back to life in the digital space. But we also went one step further. We reached out to the original copywriters and the art directors, and we put them on camera, and we documented their experiences of recreating these campaigns for the new spaces, the new environments to reach new audiences. And the core of our campaign was, if it can be done by those who did this well in a different medium before, we can all do this again in the new medium and do it in a way that's much more authentic and effective, and bring that to life. And so all of that becomes, who do I trust? I trust people who've been there before, who've delivered on some of the biggest, most iconic campaigns that we've ever seen, and being able to sort of make that a relatable moment back into that experience. And so, let's get to community. I think about community as the core of every marketing, campaign, CMO in this day and age. And community spans in so many different ways. And so the work that we've done together in the last, 8 months or so, to bring to life a community that is all about the members and their interactions with each other, but also the interactions with our brand, the Degreed brand, has been, really fascinating in how we've evolved that strategy and being able to bring that to life. And I'm excited that we launched last week, I should say. And I don't know if we have a hype reel or something here that we could pull up, but what's exciting about it is it's very different to how we've been thinking about B2B marketing, B2B branding before. And it does center around people, bringing people together in spaces. I sort of call it freedom within fences, right? You've got to create some fences and guardrails, but you've got to create that freedom for people to be able to experience things together.
That's exactly it. And just before I play the video, when thinking about starting a community, we had really engaging discussions around the best approach to ensure that that sense of fostered trust, if you like, is in place. What are some of the considerations around building that from the beginning, so that it isn't just another brand play? Like, what strategies have we done to put in place, if you like, to really start that journey, so that the members, when they come into that community, are, well, I suppose, have the right level of advocacy and really want to participate in that, as opposed to be an audience, a passive audience?
Yeah, I mean, if you break down what we did, I'd put it in sort of structured in sort of 4 steps. Step one, number one, core to any marketing strategy or brand strategy is you have to understand your audience, right? Their needs, interests, aspirations, motivations. So we've got to go back into the basics and understand that. That doesn't change. That essentially is getting a deeper understanding of who we're targeting and why. In the community that we created, one of the key things that we focused on was early adopters, innovators, right? These are leaders in their industries trying to break new ground. How can we support them to be more successful? Like, what does that look like in terms of formulating ideas? And typically in B2B, one of the challenges, is the natural sort of playbook is, let's go back to thought leadership and let's create more stuff and more content and send it out there and hope people read it. In my mind, brands and vendors should not be responsible for generating content in B2B. It's the community that creates the content as they see fit in order to evolve evolve the conversation, evolve the thinking, push forward in the areas in which they are most interested in, right? Number 2 is being very clear on the shared goal of the community, right? So how do we think about the shared goal to encourage the right people to participate and be involved and get involved? So once you've identified who and what they're interested in, you can identify the shared goal. And we place that front and center from month 1. I think we were very clear in our conversations about what's the shared goal. You nail those 2 pieces, and then you can develop the platform, you can develop the sort of models for engagement, nudging. What's the way in which we'll facilitate repeat interest to come back into the platform and the community? And we spend a lot of time talking through, do we sort of, is it 80% Degreed in terms of creating the engagement, or is it 20%? Right? What's that balance? And then the last thing I'd say that's really critical here is staging it out, right? So, what does month 1 look like versus year 1, right? Where do we want to be at the end of the year? How do we build that community? It is a challenge in trying to balance participation, interest, engagement with having the right membership involved and making sure that we have the right influencers from the get-go, so that they're actively leaning into the community so we can do less work and they do more work.
Yeah.
It's a imprecise science.
It's exactly right.
It is.
Which is when we're talking about staying human in a digital world, the humanity element of that is always going to have an element of impreciseness. Well, I have a little video here of some of the founding members coming together and talking about some of the inspiration behind the shift, and we'll talk a bit more about what's exactly included within that in a moment.
Super excited about the shift. It's a place for people to come together to solve a big problem that no individual can solve by themselves.
There's a huge appetite.
A couple of things made me excited about the shift. Nobody is actually ahead of the game. We will innovate in ways that we would not be able to innovate alone. So I think there's a huge opportunity to learn from each other. So there's the sense of being able to connect.
This is going to take you into the unknown.
And to shape together this space. This gives us an opportunity, thinking.
Just an enhanced opportunity to continue to network with peers that are also really passionate about moving skills forward in their respective companies.
And really be careful about the decisions we take and the choices we make.
Awesome. Cool.
Yay!
Indeed.
Nailed it. Now, let me tell you something else as well. This is exciting, right? So We launched it this week in Texas, down in Houston, and within 24 hours, we did a sort of like a special invite of. We had a conference earlier this week. We had about 350 there at our conference. I think we got more than 60-70% who signed up within 24 hours. But that was done in a very intentional way. We invited folks in the room intentionally because we knew that they would be the most active from day one and most engaged. But further, we wanted to make sure that they had something interesting to something special, make them feel special, make it feel exclusive, make it feel unique when they join from the start. So, whether it's B2B or B2C, we're all ultimately people trying to understand how to do better in our worlds, right? Whatever the worlds are. And so I think when when this came on stage, I think the reception was pretty incredible. So credit to the team, the entire team. So
well, thank you. I mean, I think it's also it's a risk going in these directions, in the sense that there are so many traditional ways, creating programming cycles, creating content experiences, creating moments that don't have proper deep-seated levels of interactivity within them. And those are easy to produce in some ways. So stepping away from that and creating an environment that really does rely on the community's sense of self and in many ways, or collective consciousness to come together and be able to facilitate that conversation and buy into this idea of turning an audience into very much a community. So I'd love to hear just very quickly, like, how would you break down the differences, I suppose, between an audience or a cohort or something like that and a community? And what are the key components or the trigger points that spark the sort of critical mass of a community play?
The barbecue smells good, by the way. A good way to look at it is passive versus active, right? So when I think of audience, I think of a definition that happens on a whiteboard with my team, as part of a strategy session, right? When I think of a community, I think of people who are driving the process of evolving the idea, right? And that is a huge distinction in my mind between the two. But yet we get confused. Oftentimes we sort of treat them the same, right? A community and audience, they're quite different. The other way to look at it is community could be a subset of an audience. Yet the way we define a community matters. As I've been thinking about this with my team, we did a sort of an exercise in understanding what are the two factors that influences a community and how we shape up the community, right? One is degree of your audience willing to lean in. So can you find pockets of your audience that are willing to lean in further and be involved and engaged, right? Like IMEX Twitter. And we spent a lot of time at Twitter trying to understand the difference between the 1 million people that would sign up every day and the 3% that would stay there 3 days later, right? And so it would take, within 72 hours, only 3% of the 1 million signups would remain on the platform. That to me says we are either willing to give up some 97% of the community or potential community here, or we haven't created the right spaces, environments for fostering the 97% to actually engage repeatedly on the platform. And I think the same thinking applies across all types of marketing efforts, is passive versus active, and within active, can we create, what is the level of leaning in, the degree of leaning in, versus the degree of exclusivity, right? The more exclusive you make something, the more people lean in. I think of a club. A club is probably the extreme end of that. And then I think a community is probably the spectrum, right, essentially. And we talked about it the other day briefly. You've got sort of community on one end. You've got maybe what we call a collective here in the middle. And then you've got a club on the other end. And so I think you can start to evolve this space and the thinking and the process of thinking about it even further. It's been, this is not a plug, but it actually has been fascinating, our conversations in in being able to think about, Degreed, the brand, how we can really establish the right community environment for the brand goals that we have.
No, absolutely. Well, I'm excited as well for the next talk because there's so many different parts of the marketing space that the same problem applies to. I mean, in a moment we'll hear surrounding how loyalty can go into that and some other components of that. A question I think that's worth touching on as well is when looking at the ways in which of reaching out and communicating and creating experiences for communities and how you can go after that. There's this the wider the spread of opportunity to connect, whether it be physical events, in real life experiences, digital programming, online meetups, chat forums, polls, quizzes, like platform and sort of unplatform both go hand in hand when trying to deliver a something that's rounded enough for people to engage with. I mean, in many ways, WhatsApp is a great example of that. There are amazing communities that sit on WhatsApp where a focus group of people are in contact with each other all of the time to solve a very, very specific problem. In our project, we went for a slightly more dynamic, rich media platform that enabled us to have a lot more video functionality and connective functionality in that way, and matchmaking and things like that. When looking at where we're going in a world of AI and seeing the rate of our ability to interact with things, get personalization, get recommendations, connecting with relevant people, suggesting content or white papers or whatever it might be to go and look at. How do you see communities move forward on an ongoing basis? And because people become ingrained or entrenched in the platforms that we create for them, or that they get, or there's an expectation that people will come to Instagram to find this, or to TikTok to find that, or whatever. But when moving forward and addressing new technologies as they come and embracing them, what's your thoughts surrounding how we should approach strategically to embrace the change on an ongoing basis, and how to get the community from the place that they might be in right now into new environments over time?
I mean, it's a brilliant question, because if you think about AI, right, and we think about AI can only work with what has been, not what will come, right? What will happen in the future. Humans talk about the future. We think about the future. We create the future, right? And that is a very important line for marketing organizations and businesses to really think about. So how do you capture the ideas and the imagination and all of the potential in the future happens through humans and creating the environments, whether it's offline, online, whatever those spaces are, right? I don't believe that AI could have had this conversation. Like, I don't believe it. We all have read all the great things that Gen AI does, and we love it. We all love it. I'm sure we do. But you also know it comes from a machine. Just knowing that changes the way you think about the role of AI versus the role of human interaction and connection, right? I'll give you an example. LinkedIn has made it, being in B2B, we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn has made it extremely easy for you to comment on someone else's post through Gen AI. It's awful. Like, it's absolutely awful. It's the worst thing that happy to say it, it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, like in terms of use of technology. Why? Like, if you're going to comment. Don't ask a machine to help you comment to someone else's post. You cannot get more inauthentic and meaningless and unrelatable than that, right? So I think there's a role for everything. I think your question leans into how do you capture the imagination of humans in the future, and you capture that through spaces and places and communities and environments. Can we emphasize that as the core of our marketing strategies in the future? Yes, I think we should. Can we do more of that? And so, I think we need to go back to the drawing board. A lot of marketing organizations need to look at their strategies from 5 years ago in this world now and recreate that for what the next 5 years will look like. And we've tried to do that within our business. The way I think about, I sort of have a 15% rule with my team, which is I need 15% of experimentation all the time. Like I need that. And I hold the line with my board and my CEO. I hold the line there. They don't now they know about it possibly, but they didn't really know about it, right? Until I just realized they know. Kind of gave something away. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Well, Deeps, it's fascinating, and I do think that experimentation is the best way to, I guess, just get started if you're on the journey of a community, and to go towards that. And well, look, I think it's almost time for the next panel. So thank you so much, Deeps. Really appreciate your time
awesome
today, and I will pass back over to Michael White.